Welcome to episode 92 of the XRM Toolcast. In this episode, Scott and I speak to the other Scott Sewell, former MVP and longtime Microsoft employee now, about Power BI sales templates. We also walk through his association with the Titanic and some things not to do in Power BI. So if you want to hear from the person that probably knows the most about Dynamics, CRM, XRM, Power Platform, and Power BI and how they work together, this is the episode for you. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of the XRM Toolcast. With me, your host, Daryl, always raising the bar, and Scott. I've got 2 feet firmly on the ground row. Scott, how's it going?
Very good, thank you, Daryl. Yes, very good. I usually have 2 feet on the ground, but you've not recently.
Yes,
so
that's the reason that I'm calling you. It's just because of me. I'm giving you a nickname. Yes, I've been traveling Europe for the first time in my life. So, Germany, Hungary, and Romania, I think, are the 3 stops. Oh, I also had an emergency landing in Canada. That was fun.
Wow.
Never had a plane turn around 2 hours over the Atlantic and then go land in the middle of Timbuktu, Canada. But pretty much the same place most of the planes landed on 9/11. So I got to kind of relive a historical moment, I guess. Had a flight canceled on the way back, so it took an extra day to get back. I have survived. My kids have survived. They're not going to school in the morning like we planned because we had thought yesterday we'd be able to get back into it. But I have got to say I've been extremely lucky on the jet lag. First day at both places, I was extremely tired, and then once I went to sleep, I was pretty much on the schedule. So I've gone to Seattle and had much worse jet lag, waking up at like 2:00 and like, I just can't go to sleep. And no, I didn't have to do that. So very lucky in that. So yes, I am back in Indiana, back in my home, back in my bed, and back at it. So
that's good. So what was it? What kind of trip was it then? Let's tell us a bit background why you were traveling.
So real quick, because this is not the point of the episode, but my wife sits on a board for an organization that helps support orphanages, primarily in Romania, and then also in Tanzania in Africa. So we went and visited a whole bunch of orphanages and churches there in Romania, and handed out Christmas bags. We had 800 Christmas bags we packed. It was a whole big truck. We had about 9 of us are going through and packing for like 6 hours. All the little items and stuff for the kids, mostly like chocolate and like Cheetos and those kind of Fanta Pop things that I'm sure some of them don't get ever at all. And so they were very, very excited to be having their Christmas little Christmas Santa bag gifts. So yeah.
That's awesome. That is an awesome. Well, so I'm glad you're safely back. And by traveling by plane, of course you could have traveled by boat.
I could have.
And not obviously a very fast way of traveling, and obviously there have been boats, ill-fated boats, such as the Titanic. And speaking of the Titanic,
you're getting better at this.
You said Titanic 3 times in a row, and I appeared.
Going from it. Yes, Titanic. Hey, this is our guest, Scott Sewell. He is a Microsoft PPM, Power BI, and Dynamics, Power Apps, and Dataverse. At least that's what his Twitter profile says. But he's not a doctor, although he plays one on TV. So I don't know if we need to have different names, because I'm going to say Scott, and we'll just assume that we're going to talk to our guest if I say Scott. Otherwise, I think we'll get confused. So Scott, welcome, Mr.
Hey, thanks. It's great to be here.
Titanic, yeah.
It's been a while since I've seen. It's been a long time since I've seen both of you in person.
Yeah,
but got fond memories of the times we got to catch up as MVPs and different cities around the world.
Yeah. Last time I was with Scott, I did ride a boat with him. So
that's right. Yeah.
To tie the knot there. So
yeah, we did. We took the ferry in the city when you came to New York, and I treated you to real pizza.
Yes. I was like, give me the New York pizza.
The real coal-fired, crispy, charred. Yeah, it's good.
Is that with pineapples or without pineapples?
No pineapples on this. But I'm going to be
controversial.
Pineapple agnostic.
I grew up with pineapple on my pizza, so I have to.
I have friends that love pineapple. I have friends that hate pineapple on pizza. I'm a guy who's going to stick with my friends.
Very wise. Yeah.
I remember my mom make cheeseburger pizza with like pickles on it, and that was actually really good.
Okay.
And I'm a big fan of that.
Now, I'm also one of the few that I will still admit to loving anchovies on pizza.
I never tried.
Solid.
Yeah. No, fish
Step up.
on
You
pizza.
gotta own that.
I could just go about with the burger pizzas, but the fish pizza, I'm not so sure about that. But,
Sounds like we need a Power BI report in our pizza.
maybe it's an
top.
acquired taste that I just need to keep
It's
on
some
doing.
umami off the charts right there.
That's a good word. Well, yes. So, but you've been very busy, Scott, recently.
It's been fun.
You've been kind of churning out content, and I've noticed you've been doing videos recently as well, which is awesome.
Trying to get a little bit of get out there, get some communication out there, just to let people know what kind of cool stuff is going on in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the one you did recently about the navigation between Power BI and into model-driven apps. It's that's a really, really good way of making it a seamless experience.
I did I happened to was looking for something about that, and I found my old CRM tip of the day from 10 years ago, maybe. And I had done one of how to navigate from SSRS reports to Dynamics. And so I looked at that. I was like, yeah, this is almost the same as what I use for now. And there was a couple of tweaks and a couple of features that I had to change for the Power BI side, but I put that out there, and it really makes it easy to navigate back and forth between, and just reduces the overall effort a user has to go through. And so that's really what we're trying to do, is kind of make the whole process frictionless.
Yeah. So, I mean, just give the listeners a bit of background, because Daryl and I have known you for eons, it seems, and you are a veteran in the Power Platform CRM space. So just give the listeners a bit of background about where you came from.
So as of January, the next month, that will mark 20 years since I started implementing Dynamics. Or actually, it was Microsoft CRM 1.0 at that point.
Wow.
So it was 20 years ago, January. And in that time, just seeing some incredible growth in that period, starting off with just, we were replacing Goldmine and Act and boxes of index cards. That was what we were all about. It's at that point, is to bring this application in and try to help people improve the process of sales, their sales, and support that. But I unlike you guys are like genius developers, which I'm so grateful that you guys provide so much to the community. I don't come from a development background. I was really more from the implementation standpoint, and I kept finding that, hey, I could start, as we got into 1.2 and 3.0, I could configure this and do a lot of the things that I would have had to send off to to developers to build. And I kept finding that this whole platform really enabled me. I didn't have the word citizen developer at that point, but I was really able to solve problems and get started and help customers build stuff real quickly on this platform. And over time, that was really my, I was super excited about it, just because it really opened the possibilities up. But over time, I kept finding that one of the things, you guys both, everybody in this community, I think, you learn that you find things that are sort of your superpower. You find things that you really get passionate about, and you zoom in on it and you double click and you go, this is really, I've got some passion about this. I've got some experience with it. I've got some skills around this. And I kept finding mine was around data, and started off doing a lot of data migration work. Learned the Kingsway, worked with Daniel Kai and Kingswaysoft to, learn that process. And that was really exciting. And then building up the SSRS reports, got excited about how to do that. And then gradually started realizing that the data got bigger and bigger, and I wanted to do summary kind of analytics on the data. and found that early on it's called Power Pivot, and then it became Power BI, really became this incredible tool to demonstrate the value of the data that's sitting inside a Dataverse. You know, we spend as Dynamics implementers, Dataverse builders, we spend a ton of time building a process and a support structure to gather, capture, modify, update, take action on all this on this data that's there. But then there's this other layer of that, this other aspect of the data, which is the value of this it could provide for a decision maker, and being able to sort of summarize and find trends and find relationships that weren't there, that aren't obvious at first. And that's where I found that Power BI was this really cool tool to pull those two together. And that's where I focused on since then.
It's funny because you talk about Goldmine, right? And the value. It's I always thought Goldmine was a great name. Perhaps, obviously, it's a very dated product now, and it really didn't have the full potential of what it could have done back then. But it was a great name because people often are sitting on a goldmine in terms of the data that they've collected, like you say. So, I mean, I noticed you very. It was almost like, I don't know, one overnight I suddenly realized, hey, Scott's just basically now Power BI guru. You know, suddenly it's like, but obviously that wasn't an overnight process. You'd obviously spent a lot of time working with Power BI and getting into it. What was it that made you move away from sort of the built-in SSRS stuff like you were talking about before, and maybe the built-in data charting that you get inside model-driven apps? What was it sort of made you to jump into that Power BI way of visualizing?
And you get extra points. You get extra points, Scott, if you include the Titanic.
Absolutely.
Because some of our listeners have no idea what we're talking about.
I think it was that idea of being able to summarize and distill data to a dashboard. Because I tried to build dashboards originally using SSRS or using the out-of-the-box dashboards. And I wanted to summarize it and show trends. I wanted to show relationships, but I was just sort of limited to what I could. I mean, there was tons of things I could show, but then you kind of get to a cliff pretty quickly that I run out of, if I'm running, if I've got a lot of data, like 50,000 rows, I hit this limit of how much can I really show. An SSRS report's great because I can show line by line. I can, print out big bar, green bar charts of things, but I really can't, show me the breakdown of these variables. And then if I want to change it, you got to go and do a lot of, you got to really monkey with it to get it to change out some new, variables, and it wasn't really user friendly like I wanted it to be. And then when I saw the Power BI piece, I was like, oh, this is kind of curious. This kind of lets me do some stuff that I couldn't do before, and started tinkering with it. And it's funny because you mentioned the Titanic, because that really was my first, I was like trying to say, let me tiptoe into Power BI. And I did a conference for the SQL community. I mean, the Power BI community, back up. The Dynamics community. And I was going to show, tiptoe into, I wanted to show, how can I show off Power BI with the data that I have? Because all my data was adventure work cycle, boring data. And I thought, well, I'd seen a demo of the Titanic data with artificial intelligence and predictive analysis, predictive stuff. I thought, oh, let me try this. And I pulled it in. It was a lot of fun to do, and had a great response from it, and kind of hung on to it for a long time. But that's been nearly 10 years ago now, almost.
Well, if I think about Microsoft, I think Contoso, and if I think of Scott, I think of Titanic. I mean, you've literally built that brand. I mean, it's pretty awesome.
It's a lot of fun. I mean, it's the thing that was fun about that early on was I would go into in a sales presentation, or more of a kind of an education process with a team, and I would be talking about this product, the Dynamics piece or the Dataverse layer, and Power Apps, and I would look to talk about Flow, and I would talk about Power BI, and I talk about this and that and the other thing, and Automate, and all these pieces that were in there. And, over a while, it's just like marketing buzzword bingo. You just got all these names of products out there. And I would kind of say, well, let's take a coffee break. And when we come back from coffee, let me show you something I was goofing on the other day. And I would show them the process I would pull up my Titanic demo and just kind of laugh it off. This is just silly. And show them how I could show the contacts and dynamics, show how it worked with Power Automate to do the approvals process. I would show how to summarize the data using Power BI, and I would show a model-driven Power App on top of it for a phone app. Showing all these things without ever actually calling out any product names.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole process was the idea of, and then I would kind of circle back and say, well, I showed you the phone app that's built with Power Apps, and I would show you the automation piece, the whole approval process that was built with Power Automate, and the analytics dashboard that was Power BI. But it got over the hump of talking about products, and really, I know it sounds like a buzzword, but it really got us past the products and talking about solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got to the solution side of it, then all my team, all the people I was working with, we were all on the same team. We were talking about how do we solve the problems. And then we knew that we had all these cool tools that we could pick from, but let's focus on the problem first, and then we could solve it. So, but it's been a fun utility. It also helped. It's also been fun to help me when I got a new product. I was like, a while back, we got the voice, the chat piece. And I built a chat bot for Titanic that would start interacting, saying, hey, say, what time is dinner? What should I wear for dinner on the Titanic? And they said, well, we suggest a life vest. And then it would say, did I see an iceberg out there? And it would say, well, an iceberg salad is a really good choice. Was that what you wanted? And then it would kind of switch into 2001. It would say, I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that. And, but anyway, it was fun. It was a great way to learn new tools, to apply them to a silly example.
That's always required. Like you have to have some reason to use the tool in order to learn the tool. It's like, okay, I need to learn this. Let me just go ahead and look at having something to push you to, hey, I need to do this, and I need to do that. And so you jump into all these areas that you wouldn't have ever have gone through just trying to learn the tool overall. And I don't know how many times I've gone through and learned something new, and having something to I need to actually make this work. And then you get into some weird, crazy Denver Coders 729 thing where you're on some forum and there's one person that's dealt with this before and they have the answer, or they but they don't tell it. You're like, where is it? So that's XKCD thing. But being able to have that goal, hey, I need to get this to work. I need to get this. I need to understand this next piece, so you can piecemeal it. Eat the elephant bite by bite is always
like I said, you focused on the solution. You're focused on a use case, as opposed to focusing on the mechanics of the tool, and so you can jump through those hoops. And it for me, it lowers the intimidation factor. I'm not trying to memorize like when I learned SSIS with Daniel. Mm-hmm. Daniel and I sat down at a conference table at the Hyatt in Bellevue one evening while we were at an MVP conference, and I said, I can't get this. It's just like I'm stuck. I don't know how. And so we said, well, let's grab a table and literally a table of data, and let's import it. And so I started this process of importing and learned it. And I wasn't focused on the tool. I was focused on trying to accomplish some goal. Mm-hmm. And for me, that just the whole intimidation factor of, because I bought one of those SSIS books, and it was like that thick. It was a big, giant books, doorstop of a book. And in reality, I only needed maybe the first 2 chapters of it to really accomplish a ton of things that I needed to accomplish. And the rest of it was just kind of icing on the cake. I was like, I can accomplish a ton of stuff with this. And that's the same thing I found with Power BI, is that there's so much you can accomplish without trying to boil the ocean and learn the entire stack of the data process. But it's those fundamentals. If you get the fundamentals out of the way, kind of understand those, you can accomplish a ton of stuff really easily.
Yeah.
And so that's been kind of my education effort.
So the Power BI stack has been part of the Power Platform for, since Power Platform was incepted, right? So, but only until recently has it started to become married together with the Power Apps side of things. And there's been a lot of people have come up against the sort of the licensing question. So, so there's been the ALM side of things has been somewhat of a barrier, as well as the licensing has been somewhat of a barrier. So people like what they see when they see these demos of Power BI, but then they realize, oh, well, I can't just simply put it into a dashboard inside my model-driven app because, okay, my users need to be licensed, as well as I can't package it. Those things are starting to change now, right? Is that right?
Well, I mean, it's like any other piece of the platform. You still need to be able to license that tool if you're going to incorporate it into your solution. It's not a free, it's not a free tool. It's just, and it has its own, and the whole Power Platform and the whole Power BI piece, the visualization layer is like the tiniest tip of the iceberg, not to go back to the Titanic, but no, it's the tiniest part of it.
Good one.
There's
Yeah,
this
I like it.
huge data layer underneath it that's incredibly powerful, that supports that process. So yeah, it does require a license for, but realistically the licenses are, I don't know what they are, what real customers pay for it. But if you look at the web page, it's like $10 a month for a user, at the retail list price. So,
Yeah.
But the reality is it becomes, what's the value of the understanding? I mean, if it's providing value to you, if the dashboards don't provide value to a user, don't put them in there for a user. Don't pay for something that's not providing value. But at the same time, if the value of being able to see into the information you have and be able to gather that, if you're the decision makers or the leaders are finding value in it, it's invaluable data. I mean, it's invaluable because you're spending a ton of money on the rest of the platform, and you're gathering and spending tons of money on the work that goes into it. You really ought to be able to look into it, have a lens to see what's going on, and can I use this information to improve my process? Can I use this information to better achieve my goals, or to make the goals more visible to the rest of the organization? That becomes, it's not the cost of what you spend, it's what the cost of not being able to see that information might be.
Opportunity loss.
There was always this slight disconnect because a lot of the time it got referred to as self-service BI. And obviously what you're talking about is an investment in setting it up and setting up a lot of the things that are required to get a good model to be able to query. But recently with the visualize functionality that you get inside model-driven apps, which is, as I understand it, open just on a Power BI free if you just want to do it from a personal perspective.
Yeah.
That seems to be like a good sort of entry level into getting into those more complex things that we'll perhaps come on to in a minute.
Yeah. That was added recently, and that does not require any kind of a license beyond your, just the fact that you're already a Dynamex license owner. And it does assign a free license to you as an individual. But again, there's no cost to that. But again, you're right. It is a kind of a way to look at a view in a Power Apps or inside of Dynamics. Look at a view, click to visualize this view, and it takes the XML of that view, translates it into a dashboard like experience, and it's guessing at what you're interested in on that dashboard. So it comes up, displays that, and then you can start modifying that dashboard. You can modify that report. You can change the visualizations. You can change which fields are showing up. Now, it's not going to be, it's not built to be like ingesting a bazillion records into the dashboard. It's not intended to be the final version of the Apex dashboard that your organization will run on. But it's a great quick start. And that's really the idea of it, is a quick way to visualize a view, then take it, you can save it, you can open it up and ingest it and view it yourself. And that whole cycle is completely within your scope. Now, if you do want to take that dashboard, you can open it up, modify it, add tables to it, add fields to it. If you wanted to then take that dashboard and share it to others, those others would need to have a pro license as well. So if you want to share a dashboard and somebody else is going to view your version of that dashboard and share it to them, you're going to need pro licenses, and that's the $10 a month versions of that. But it's really where, that's where you move into start having a center for people who are built. Not everybody's going to build Power BI dashboards. I get it. I think everybody ought to, but not everybody's going to. But as you start moving into that, then people start going, hey, I found this superpower that I have about like really taking a big chunk of data and sort of summarizing it, distilling it into what's really critical. And then I can show you what that data is. And that's just a real growth area for people on the Power Platform.
It's kind of like with Power Apps makers, some people might well start doing it and feel like they've got a passion for it and a real flair for it, and then move on to do more and greater things. So I love that visualize as a sort of like a way into it. And like you say, you can save that and start to edit it. But then if you want to then start to do more complex things, you've got a really good resource that you've recently released.
When I started with Power BI, I ran my head into some brick walls, just trying things, and I frustrated myself, and I was like, but I was still passionate about it because I had to get my Titanic demo to work. But I kept trying stuff and going, and then I would go, I have to do this. I learned that. And I would, some of it was trial and error. Some of it was more error than anything. But I kept learning new things along the way. And over time, I've built up some example dashboards or some examples that really were just me learning to better demonstrate how do you take apart a Dynamics instance and turn that into a Power BI data model and visualization layer. And, some of the most intuitive ways you go about it will really run you into the ground, which is terrible for me to say. But
so not the pit of success that you want then, huh?
What's that?
Not the pit of success that you want.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, like
despair.
We all know, the people, everybody on this in your audience already knows, if you go to Dataverse, you've got tables and columns and relationships between those, right? That's just tables. That's the way that the whole thing's built. And you already know what those tables and relationships do and how they work together. That's you live and breathe that stuff. If you go over to Power BI and look at the schema model, you'll see tables, you'll see columns, you'll see relationships. And the first mistake that I've made, first mistake other people have made, is to try to lift and shift that schema from one to the other. Yeah. And you can do it, but you create nightmares for yourself in terms of queries. It makes it, the queries become gymnastics of DAX gymnastics, and you create performance problems. You create weird interactions that you weren't expecting. Hey, take it from me. I did it. I created those nightmares for myself, and you have to really start rethinking of it in terms of a star schema for modeling analytics data. It is a bit of a different thought.
You said a star schema?
That's where those books that you have, probably the first few chapters are probably the most important ones in data warehousing. And have you come across, obviously the star schema, but the kind of mistake that I think I probably made the same mistake as you originally is because it makes it very easy. It auto detects your relationships. So you say, hey, I'll just auto detect. And then suddenly you end up with this sprawling kind of, multi-headed.
We've all been with customers, new customers, and they said, oh, give me an Irwin diagram of dynamics. And you go, really? You really wanted that? You're not going to like it when you get it. I mean, if you just like dump the whole thing out there, there's like tables and lines everywhere. It's just this jumble of stuff. I mean, it's stuff we love. It's our home. We know and love it, but it is we underestimate the the complexity of that model. Sometimes, even if you think about the number of relationships between the system user table, every entity in that, almost every entity has 3-4 relationships to the system user table. You got modified by, overridden, modified by, created by, overridden, created by, owner. It's like 4 or 5 at a bare minimum. And you start putting all that together, and the relationship, the trying to turn that into a schema for analytics just becomes crazy. It's the same. You think back to the other process, you go the other direction and say, okay, somebody walks in with Goldmine or a box of cards or, some other application that was built, and you say, I want to take that. And the first thing I do is say, okay, let me replicate your data model from Goldmine and try to shove it into Dynamics. And just rebuild all the entities you had in the old system into the new system. You're missing out the power. You create all kinds of crazy stuff for yourself. Whereas you say, okay, let me understand that model that was there. I already understand this other model over here. Let me do a translation of that to work within it. So you still have to do the same thing when you go over to Power BI.
So what would you say is the key difference between the kind of relational data model that you'd get in Dataverse and a star data schema that you'd get in Power BI?
Yeah. So think about them as in terms of purpose. The relational model inside of Dataverse is great because it just has this incredible richness of being able to navigate between records and forms and do all that. And that's they have relationships between them. But it's not trying to be a model that says, let me summarize. I mean, the model itself doesn't try to summarize big chunks of data other than some simple roll-ups of data. So that's not really the purpose of it. But it does have this incredibly wide variety of things it can do. When you go over to the Power BI side, and it's not really limited to Power BI, it's really any analytics process. You want to start with, what's my fact that I'm going after? What am I trying to measure? Am I looking at opportunities? What is it about the opportunities that I'm interested in? And even though there's a lot of details on the opportunity, you're really looking at things like how many opportunities have been created? How many of them have been won? What's the ratio of opportunities to be closed? What's the value of those opportunities? What was the estimated value? And then what is that over time? It's those kind of facts that I'm looking at. And then you have around it the dimensions of things like who is the customer? Who is the owner? What products was on it? What was the date associated with it? And you have different dates. You have a created date. You have an estimated close date and an actual close date. A lot of things like that sort of become this peripheral around it. And to move into a star schema, you think about that opportunity as being the fact table right in the middle. And then branching off from that, you have, like I said, your owners, your campaigns, your accounts, your contacts that own that surround that. And it's amazing if you simplify it that way. It's really an effort of simplification. You simplify that, then it becomes this really, really powerful tool that you can say, let me show you how I summarize what's going on inside our sales organization.
Hmm. Now I know what a star schema is.
Yeah. And so, and again, it was a challenge for me I heard star schema. I trusted the people that told me that, but I ignored them. I thought, well, I know better.
We all do it. We all do it.
Whatever. Yeah. Cute. That's star schema. That's cute. I already know my schema and dynamics. I know this stuff. That's cute for you guys, but let me just move my schema over. Oh man, I made it so much harder for myself. In an effort to make this easier, I've done a couple things here at Microsoft to try to help bridge that gap. A couple things that I should point out to you, users, your listeners. There's a new article that I dropped onto the Docs site, and it really is Power Platform. It's modeling the Power Platform for Power BI, and it's really saying, how do I move from one to the other? How do I think about these models as I move over? What are the tools, even when I get into the connectivity options that are out there? What's the way to do that? And then some best practices. One of the first things that I ran into was, if you just say, okay, I want the account entity, and I'll pull that into Power BI. How many columns are in the default out of the box column entity? Account record.
80, 90?
It's closer to 200 something.
Oh,
when you include the option, option set value and then the option set label.
Okay, yeah.
That's a good trivia question.
Yeah, it's awful. It's just huge. And if you just default say, just give me the whole thing and I'm going to bring it in and then we'll sort it out later. Well, you can do that, but your performance, because it's grabbing this ginormous set of data and says, okay, let me pull in 200 something columns, and then you pick the 4 of them that you want out of that. But I'm still going to pull in all 200 columns every time you refresh it. That's a performance hit that you're going to take up front, and you're going to get frustrated early on. One of the best practices that I point out in the document is to say, start with a really narrow query. You want your account name, the account ID, the name, and then what city and territory is it in, and who's the owner of that account as a dimension. Start with really narrow stuff and limit it that way. That improves the performance of the queries dramatically. And it also makes your schema easier to look at inside of Power BI. Instead of having a gazillion fields, you got a handful that are really the relevant fields. Not every field is relevant for analytics. You just pick the ones that are really relevant for your organization. So building that document was really important. The other part of it is the connectivity pieces that we have. Early on, back in the old days, 2 years ago, Power BI, the only way you could do this was, only realistic way to do it was to set up the data export service. May it rest in peace. Set up the data export service and then connect to it and write your queries against it and bring it in. Now we have the ability to do a direct query or use a Dataverse connector that connects directly from Power BI and consumes data directly out of Dataverse and pulls it into Power BI. And I can do it a number of ways. I've also got now the exports data lake and Synapse path that lets me get ginormous sets of data out and build really scalable. Got that option available. The problem I ran into is if I looked at the documentation here at Microsoft and whatever I binged or Googled, whatever I did, went to it, I could find a description of how do you do Synapse. And it would walk me through and give me correct answers on how to set up Synapse. But it wouldn't say, by the way, if you're only trying to pull, 50,000 records, this is overkill for you. Here's another approach that might be better. Or if you looked at the direct query approach and said, here's how to set it up, it'll go through the processes. But if you're trying to pull 250,000 records, this thing's going to collapse like a flan in the oven. It is it's not the right fit for that use case. And so what I did in the document was went through possibilities of thinking about, do you want to preserve security as you pull it in? Do you need to have it real time when you open the dashboard, it goes and asks for all the data? Or is it okay if you refresh it on a regular basis so you have data and it makes it faster to consume?
That sounds like a fantastic resource. We'll have to put a link to that in the episode notes, because
it was a giant Word document that I started off with. That was going to be a 2-page. Here's a couple of ideas, and it turned into like 30 pages of me just going on. Yeah, obviously, you guys know me. I get excited about it. I get passionate about it, talking about it. But we took that and then distilled it down to one that's a quick read, and it kind of points out to other documents to say, for more information about a star schema, look over here at this document. They'll give you, or for more information about how Azure Synapse work, here's where you go to get that information. But it sort of gives you a little bit of a roadmap and guideline.
And so, but you also recently released on GitHub a whole set of resources for doing some fantastic visualization. So it seems like it's kind of more like a dashboard in a box, as it were, built on your CRM data.
Yeah, I spent all this time talking about best practices, and I kept, I had a dashboard that I was using as a demo to here's how you build this, and here's how you implement these best practices. And then I realized this dashboard I built, the sales dashboard, could be really useful to somebody else as kind of to look at it and poke it and say, oh, I like this idea, or here's a way to take the concept that I've heard about and look at how it would be implemented in a dashboard. And one of my guiding principles was, I only wanted to use out of the box fields and columns and tables and relationships. I did not want to use I wanted to require zero customization, as well as I wanted to kind of zoom in on just what are the commonly used things. I mean, there's no one size fits everybody, but I want to use kind of, here's what would be common in a sales implementation. Let me try that and build it out so that people could look at it and go, oh, okay, I saw that, and here's the application of that, and I can use it. I stuck it on GitHub, had really great feedback on it. So people would give me some ideas and I've revised it several times over that. But I've got several versions of it. I've got one that's a TDS direct query version, which if you open up the report, it goes and asks for the data at runtime. It asks for the data, so it's pulling in using the credentials of the security of the user, and so it's asking that at the moment you open the report. So it takes care of that perspective, but it also, because there's there's no data when I open it, there's a lag before it gets refreshed because I open the report and it's blank, and I have to wait for it to go ask all the data and pull it in and visualize it. I built another one that was using the same connectivity, and so it doesn't require, I can just lock and load and explore it, but it does import it you set it up to import every hour or whatever. And then I built another version built off of the Synapse piece for bigger scale. And then I went a step further and built one where it's the opportunity and the opportunity line items. And that becomes a kind of a different perspective on how do you roll that up into a star. So that's a little bit more of a challenging one, but I built that as an example, and I keep updating them. Over last week, I think it was, I actually took those same dashboards and put them into a solution and I published a managed version of the solution and an unmanaged version. Again, I have friends on both sides of the equation there. But I built them as both a managed and an unmanaged version, same identical product, same identical aspects in both of them. And if you import that, it will set up a simple app. And in that app, it has, I pull in the account, but I've created a new, I'll pull in the dashboards, set up a dashboard. So in the app, you see the dashboards, but I created a new form on the account record that embeds the report in the account record, so that when I go to ADatum Corp, I go to a tab and I can see a report for ADatum's interactions in the sales side. So that embedded experience there. Built all that together, as well as included showing how to set up variables or parameters. As I import the solution, it prompts me saying, how many hours difference are you from GMT? And how many months of history do you want to incorporate? So it demonstrates how to use those parameters. And then you save it and publish it, and you can take a run at it and look at it. As well as, again, it's the same elements that are sitting in the GitHub repository as individual pieces. I just packaged them together for somebody to try to take a quick run at it. And you can import it into a demo environment. And again, it does not require, it doesn't require that you make any modifications to your environment to allow it to come in. I don't have any prerequisites. And if you use the managed version, you can install it, run it, publish it, run it. And then if you say, okay, I want to actually go deeper in this, you can actually hit uninstall, and it completely goes back to where you were. And it's not modifying any of your existing tables or forms, anything like that. So it's pretty lightweight and keeps that advantage going in place.
Very helpful.
But that's out there now. And I just put a video out last week that goes through the process of, it's like 10 minutes, and there's a dance break in the middle of it. You have dance and coffee in the middle of it while you hit publish all. But other than that,
are you dancing in it?
I don't sing. I mute myself. So.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
But you are break dancing, so that's good.
Right, yeah, absolutely, yeah. I can. That's everyone needs to go and watch that video. I think we should put a link into that as well. I mean, the fact that you can now import Power BI dashboards with a solution, for me, is huge. And I mean, it's kind of not really had a fanfare, really. That functionality sort of slipped into one of the releases recently, and then it's like, okay, oh, it's there now. But actually, the implications are massive.
Yeah, it's still pre-GA. We're still. And honestly, me building it myself is back to our earlier part of the conversation. Me building it myself was an effort to start poking at it and see if I can find holes in it. And I have found a couple of things that I've reported back to the team and said, hey, if you do, if it's a full moon and you do this and you do that other thing over there, and then you don't, and there's a mismatch there. And they've been able to be responsive on that. But the two applications are so complex. There's so many things that can go on. We need that feedback to say, hey, I bring these two together, and here's my reproduction. Here's my case. I can reproduce this, and, let's fix it. But you kind of got two worlds working together that have always been friendly to each other, but really haven't, gotten in the car and tried to drive together.
Going on a road trip always really lets you know who your friends are, right? Because if you can spend 3 hours, listening to the same CD because you only brought one, and there's no radio stations between here and Timbuktu, and still like each other afterwards, you're pretty good friends.
15 years ago, I was Amy and I were dating at that point, and I was trying to move from South Carolina up to New York City, and we got in the car. We got in the U-Haul to haul my stuff up to New York. And about 30 minutes out of South Carolina, I said, "So we're going to get married?" And that would have been a long 13-hour drive if she'd said, "No, that's not a good idea."
That was a calculated risk. I think
that was a risk.
Right. I thought either she would say yes and we'd have a great conversation, or I'd have another 12 and a half hours to convince her. I don't know.
So that was the proposal ask, just on the whim. So we're going to get married, huh?
Yeah, I'm a romantic like that.
So you were driving at the same time, were you, as well? There was no eye contact for very long,
Right. Yes. Be bold, man. Just be bold.
That reminds me of A Beautiful Mind in the movie. The genius mathematician in there, Russell Crowe plays, like, he goes out to a bar and meets a girl, and he's like, I just want to spend the night with you. How do we eliminate all this other stuff so I can do that? And she's like, give me a second to take my romantic notions I've had since a child and throw them out the window. So I think when you are with someone that's definitely on the nerdier side of the scale, such as myself, it helps having a wife or a spouse that's able to throw the romantic notions or assumptions out the window at times. And
she gives me a lot of grace.
So we're gonna get married. Yes, that's awesome. I love that. We heard your getting married story. So that's your proposal story.
Part of the origin story. Yeah.
Bonus.
Well, Scott, is there anything that we have missed with these templates you've been talking about? Anything else Power BI that we need to make sure we catch up with you before we call it a day?
I think those are the key elements, and really, I would encourage you and your listeners to jump in and try them out and get an experience, because again, it has become what I've found in some of the conversations I've had with developers and with other organizations that are out there. One of the curious things that I found was, and again, Dynamics is my heart. That's where I come from. This whole process. But the cool thing is, as this platform evolves and matures, and so much more capability has been simplified, and things that the three of us used to do, and even to the ribbon toolbar, ribbon workbench.
Close one.
It was
nice recovery.
Yeah, the nightmare that was before your tool became available, and then your tool was available, and it's still intimidating to a normal person. And then now it's gotten to where you can actually do the tool. No offense, Scott, but you can actually do a lot of cool things in the ribbon without actually the toolbar, the workbench. And over that time, the bar for adding customizations, adding complexity to an environment continues to drop, and more people are empowered to take advantage of this. We, as we're kind of freed up to try to take on more interesting and more complex and more interesting challenges. But if we just say, okay, my whole skill set revolves around, I know how to create a table, I know how to create a column, I know how to organize a form. If you don't evolve beyond that, the value of that as a distinct advantage starts falling away. But those of us, those like yourselves who are leaders in that, say, great, now that's something that everybody can do. Let me add value to it in a different way. Let me add some other things that add value to it and grow that experience. I see customers or partners doing the same thing with Power BI. People who have built Dynamics implementations, and they built up an organization that could deliver Dynamics, are now saying, okay, a lot of the things that we used to go in and that's what customers paid us to do. Those are things that we can empower that customer to do for themselves. Let's raise the value of what we deliver to them. And we're finding that analytics is one of the ingredients, not the only ingredient, but one of the ingredients that they can add back and say, here's how we can demonstrate the value of all this work that's going into your platform today. Here's how it is. And it just raises the bar all the way around, and the customers get higher value. The partners are getting better value out of it because they're delivering services and value that just overall is a higher value process.
Always good to hear people raising the bar.
Take advantage of what I've put out there, and I would love to hear from people. If you've had experience with it, if you like stuff that's in there, if you say, hey, in fact, I got an email this morning from a guy that said, hey, by the way, if you did this over here, it would make this process a little easier. I'm like, you're right, it is. Why did I miss that? And I've already fixed it, and I've already uploaded to GitHub.
That's awesome.
So what you're saying is, anybody has a problem, you're going to fix it within the next hour and get it for them. That's what I'm hearing.
I will. I'll fix it on Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Some
Tuesday.
A Tuesday.
Well, I'll fix it on a day ends in Y, but just whatever on that happens to be, who knows? So, well, Scott, thanks so much for spending some time with us, for sharing all these backstories and things I didn't know about, even you and your personal life. And it's been great getting to know you. I'm, have a hankering for New York pizza right now because of you.
Yep.
And also because it's lunchtime and I'm not sure what time zone my stomach is on, but I think I've transitioned as well. But, so if people do want to get hold of you, Scott, what's the best way for them to get hold of you? How would you prefer them to find you?
So, my email is pretty easy to figure out. It's scott.sewell@microsoft.com. That's pretty easy to figure out. I am on LinkedIn. I'm putting a lot of stuff. Actually, I start putting stuff on LinkedIn more than I have in the past.
Okay.
And if you find it, my first, it's M. Scott Sewell. My first name is actually Michael, but it's M. Scott Sewell. You find me on LinkedIn that way. And I'm also moving over to Mastodon away from the Bird app a little bit, but those are the primary ways right now. But the GitHub repository, obviously you have a link to it, and I'll give you the link to the documentation. Those are also good ways to get in touch with too.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks, Scott. Appreciate that.
It's been
Mr.
good to see you
Giroux,
guys.
that's how our listeners can get a hold of our guests. How can our listeners get a hold of us?
Well, Daryl, yes, you can get hold of us at cast@xrmtoolbox.com by email, or you can get us on Twitter, or you can get us LinkedIn at xrmtoolcast, and we'd love to hear from you. Yeah, it's really been great. Thank you very much, Scott, to hear about everything and all your insights into Power BI. It's so nice to hear from someone who is both an expert in CRM and the Power platform, and especially Power BI, that side, because I think that's certainly an unusual in this space to have that expertise on both sides. So it's been fantastic to hear your insights.
It's been fun to talk about with you guys.
Well, thanks, Scott. We'll talk to you later. And thanks, Scott. Talk to you later as well. Thanks, Scotties. Hi, guys. How are you?
Thanks, everyone.
Scott,
Bye-bye.
Scott, Daryl.
Bye.
See ya.
This has been the XRM Toolcast with Daryl Labar and Scott Durrell. Produced by Lynn Zawin. If you have any questions or suggestions, please send them to cast@xrmtoolbox.com, tweet @XRM Toolcast, or hit us up on our LinkedIn XRM Toolcast page.